She was poor, hungry, and forgotten by the world. Every day was a struggle to survive on the streets of Lagos. But one evening, everything changed when a billionaire stopped his car. From the slums of Ajaganle to the bright offices of Victoria Island, her journey will test her courage, her faith, and her dreams. But can she rise above jealousy, doubt, and hardship to become the woman she was born to be? Don't miss this inspiring story. She was poor until a billionaire stopped his car. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that will touch your heart. Chiamaka sat on the wooden bench outside her small room, watching the sun go down over the crowded streets of Ajagunle and Lagos. The noise of hawkers filled the air, women selling roasted corn, men calling out prices of used clothes, children running barefoot, and the loud horns of Danfo buses. Life around her was busy, but inside her heart there was only silence and hunger. Her stomach rumbled, but she ignored it. There was no food left in the house. The last cup of gari she had soaked yesterday evening was gone. Her mother had died many years ago, and her father, who used to be a carpenter, had passed away after a long sickness. Since then, she had been alone. She was just 20, but her life already felt too heavy. She worked at a small roadside shop, selling sachet water and soft drinks for a woman in the neighborhood. Each day, she stood under the hot sun from morning till night, and at the end of the day, she was given only 500 naira. It was barely enough for rent, food, and survival. Sometimes she wondered how she had managed to live this long. Her room was small, just one iron bed with a thin mattress, a plastic chair, and a bucket in the corner. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained, and rats often ran across the floor at night. Yet this was the only place she could afford. Each time she lay down, she prayed for a miracle, something that would lift her out of this endless suffering. That evening, as she sat outside, her landlord walked past. He stopped and looked at her with a frown. "Chiamaka, don't forget you are owing 2 months' rent," he said sharply. "If you don't pay by next week, I will lock your door." Her heart dropped. She forced herself to nod. "Yes, sir, I will find the money." But deep inside, she had no idea where that money would come from. She earned too little, and saving was impossible. The thought of sleeping on the street frightened her. Lagos was not a safe place for a young woman with nowhere to go. That night she tried to sleep, but her mind refused to rest. She thought about her life, her struggles, and how different things might have been if she had been born into a rich family. She remembered how, as a child, she had admired the children from wealthy homes who were dropped at school in big cars. They wore neat uniforms, carried new school bags, and talked about holidays abroad. She had walked to school barefoot most times, carrying her books in a nylon bag. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered a short prayer. "God, please, if there is any way, help me. I am tired of suffering." The next morning, she woke up before dawn, washed quickly, and prepared for another day of selling under the hot sun. She tied her old wrapper tightly, picked up her small handbag, and walked to the shop. She had no idea that her life was about to change. Somewhere in the busy streets of Lagos, a car she never imagined would one day stop before her. The shop was already open when Chiamaka arrived. She arranged the sachet water in a cooler, wiped the bottles of soft drinks, and placed them on the wooden table in front of the kiosk. The sun was just rising, but sweat was already forming on her forehead. Lagos never rested, and even in the early hours, the street was alive with movement. By mid-morning, she had sold only a few items. Many customers came, haggled endlessly, and left without buying. Others shouted at her as if she was the reason prices had gone up. She smiled politely, but each word cut her heart. Her boss, Madame Bisi, sat inside the shop counting money from yesterday. From time to time, she barked orders. "Chiamaka, arrange those crates properly. Chiamaka, are you sleeping? Pay attention." Chiamaka obeyed silently. She needed the job, even if the pay was small and the insults heavy. As the day dragged on, she thought about her life again. She wanted more than the endless heat, the hunger, and the shame of poverty. She wanted to wear clean clothes that were not borrowed or torn. She wanted to eat food without worrying if it would last till the next day. She wanted to sleep on a real bed without holes in the mattress. Her biggest dream was to return to school. She had dropped out after secondary school because her father's sickness consumed all the money they had. She had always loved reading and had once dreamed of becoming a lawyer, but that dream had been buried under the weight of bills and survival. Now even university seemed like something meant for others, not for someone like her. At noon, when the sun was hottest, Chiamaka sat under a tree near the shop, fanning herself with a piece of cardboard. She watched the road as cars passed by, yellow buses filled with passengers shouting, Okada riders weaving dangerously through traffic, and shiny private cars with tinted windows gliding smoothly. She wondered what it felt like to sit inside one of those cars, with the cool air of air conditioning blowing on your face, instead of standing under the sun with sweat dripping down your back. She wondered what it felt like to open a fridge full of food and not worry about the next meal. Her thoughts were interrupted when her friend Ifeoma walked by. Ifeoma sold fruits nearby, and though her life was also tough, she always tried to encourage Chiamaka. "You look tired, my sister," Ifeoma said, sitting beside her. "Don't worry, one day things will change." Chiamaka smiled weakly. "I hope so. Sometimes I feel like I am just wasting my life." That evening, after closing from work, she walked back home slowly. The road was dusty, and the noise of generators filled the air. Children played in the street, their laughter echoing through the night. But in her heart, there was no joy. She lay on her bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. Sleep refused to come. She closed her eyes and imagined herself standing in a big courtroom, dressed in a lawyer's robe, speaking with confidence. In her dream, people listened and respected her. But when she opened her eyes, she was back in her leaking room, surrounded by silence. She sighed deeply and turned on her side. "Maybe life will always be like this," she whispered. But destiny was moving closer. She did not know it yet, but soon the very kind of car she admired from a distance would stop right in front of her, and inside was the man who would change everything. The next morning began like any other. Chiamaka woke up early, washed her face with water from a plastic bowl, and tied her wrapper tightly. She had no food to eat, so she drank plain water to calm her stomach. Hunger was no longer new to her. It had become like a quiet companion she carried everywhere. She walked quickly to the shop, her slippers slapping against the dusty ground. As she passed by houses and kiosks, she noticed people busy with their own struggles. Mothers preparing children for school, men rushing to catch buses, and traders setting out their goods. Lagos was alive again, but for Chiamaka, it was just another battle to survive. By afternoon, she was already weak from the sun. She had been standing for hours attending to customers, carrying crates of drinks and wiping sweat from her face. Her boss scolded her twice for being slow, and each word made her feel smaller. When the shop finally closed that evening, Chiamaka was too tired to think. She started the long walk home. She could have taken a bus, but the little money in her pocket was for rent. If she spent it, the landlord would have another reason to threaten her. The street was busy with noise, horns, shouting conductors, and music blasting from shops. She walked past people buying roasted plantain and suya, the smell filling the air. Her stomach growled, but she pressed on. As she reached a junction, she heard loud laughter behind her. A group of young men were sitting by the roadside, drinking and teasing passers-by. One of them pointed at her and shouted, "See this girl? Fine face, but suffering want finish her." The others burst into laughter. Chiamaka's face burned with shame. She kept walking, her head down, pretending not to hear. But their words cut deep. Poverty not only starved her body, it also stole her dignity. She walked faster, blinking back tears. She hated moments like this. The moments when life reminded her of how low she had fallen. If only she had a chance, just one chance, she could prove to the world that she was more than this. It was then, as she approached the main road, that something unusual happened. A black SUV slowed down beside her. The tinted window rolled down, and she caught a glimpse of the man inside. His face was calm, his suit neat, and his eyes sharp. The car was far beyond anything she had ever imagined sitting in. "Are you okay?" the man's deep voice asked. Chiamaka froze, her steps halting. She looked around, unsure if he was speaking to her. But there was no one else on the sidewalk at that moment. "Yes, I'm fine," she replied softly, almost whispering. The man's eyes studied her for a second. Then he said, "It's late. You shouldn't be walking alone. Do you need a ride?" Her heart raced. She had always been warned about strangers, especially men in big cars. She tightened her grip on her small bag. But before she could answer, the sound of the young men's laughter echoed again from behind. She shivered. Maybe, just maybe, entering the car was safer than facing more insults. Still, fear and doubt filled her chest. Who was this man? Why would someone like him stop for someone like her? For the first time in her life, she stood at a crossroad. Not of streets, but of destiny. Chiamaka's legs trembled as she stood by the roadside, her eyes fixed on the black SUV. The man inside waited patiently, his calm gaze never leaving her. For a moment, she wanted to run. What if he was dangerous? What if entering the car led to something worse than insults from strangers? But then, another thought pushed forward. Life was already hard. She had nothing to lose. The laughter of the young men behind her grew louder, and she felt her chest tighten with shame. Without thinking too much, she stepped closer to the car. The man leaned forward and opened the door. "Come in. I'll drop you where you are going." Chiamaka hesitated one last time, whispering a silent prayer under her breath. Then she climbed into the back seat. The cool air from the air conditioner touched her skin, and for the first time in many years, she felt a strange comfort. She sank into the soft leather seat, her eyes wide as she looked around. Everything smelled clean, the glass shone, and the quiet inside the car felt unreal compared to the noisy street outside. The driver, a middle-aged man in a neat uniform, glanced at her through the mirror but said nothing. The man beside him, the owner of the car, closed the window and turned to her. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Chiamaka," she replied, her voice barely audible. "That's a beautiful name. My name is Mr. Okafor." She nodded quickly, unsure of what else to say. Her hands gripped her small bag tightly, her heart still racing. "Where do you live?" he asked. She mentioned her street in Ajagunle, and he gave the driver a nod. The car moved smoothly through the traffic, far different from the noisy buses she was used to. She sat stiffly, afraid of making a mistake. After a moment of silence, Mr. Okafor spoke again. "You look troubled. Were those boys disturbing you?" Chiamaka looked down at her hands. "They were only talking. I'm fine." He studied her for a while but did not push further. Instead, he asked about her work, and slowly she explained that she sold sachet water and drinks in a kiosk. Her words were careful, her tone shy. She felt embarrassed admitting her struggles in front of a man who clearly lived in another world. Yet he listened without judgment, nodding gently as if her story mattered. By the time they reached her street, night had already fallen. The car stopped in front of her small compound. She felt her cheeks burn as she thought of him seeing the shabby building she called home. "Thank you, sir," she said quickly, opening the door. But before she stepped out, he spoke again. "Chiamaka, you remind me of someone I once knew, a young girl with dreams. Don't give up on yourself." She froze, surprised by his words. Then he reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. "If you ever need help, call this number." Her fingers shook as she collected the card. She whispered another, "Thank you," and stepped out of the car. The SUV drove away, its red lights fading into the distance, leaving her standing in the darkness of her street. She looked at the card in her hand, her heart pounding. Was this the answer to the prayer she had whispered nights ago? Or was it just another trick life played on her? She did not know yet, but deep inside, something told her story was only beginning. That night, Chiamaka could not sleep. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, the small card clutched tightly in her hand. The letters shone faintly in the dim light. Mr. Okafor, Okafor, Holdings Limited. She had never heard of the company before, but the name alone sounded powerful. "Why me?" she whispered to herself. "Why would a man like that stop for someone like me?" Her mind ran wild with questions. Could it be a trap, or was it truly an act of kindness? She thought about her prayer the night before, and the timing felt too strange to be ordinary. But still, doubt filled her heart. By morning, she tucked the card into the pocket of her wrapper and went to work as usual. All day, her thoughts were far away. She sold drinks, gave customers change, and listened to Madame Bisi's endless complaints. But her mind was with that car, that man, and that card. When she returned home in the evening, Ifeoma, her friend, came over with a bowl of roasted corn. "You look worried," Ifeoma said, sitting beside her. Chiamaka hesitated, then showed her the card. Ifeoma's eyes widened. "Huh? Okafor Holdings? I know that name. My uncle once talked about them. That man is a billionaire." "Chiamaka, how did you get this?" Chiamaka explained what happened, and Ifeoma gasped. "You are lucky, oh, but be careful. Not every rich man has good intentions." That warning stayed with Chiamaka. For 2 days she held on to the card, unsure of what to do. On the third day, after her landlord reminded her of the rent again, desperation pushed her forward. She borrowed a neighbor's small phone and dialed the number. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Good afternoon. Please, I'm the girl you dropped at Ajagunle. My name is Chiamaka." The man's voice came warm through the phone. "Ah, Chiamaka, I was hoping you would call. Can you meet me at my office tomorrow morning?" "I want us to talk." Her heart raced. She agreed, though fear still filled her chest. The next morning she wore her best dress. Though it was old and faded, she washed it carefully and ironed it with a neighbor's charcoal iron. She plaited her hair neatly and prayed before leaving. The office building was in Victoria Island, tall and shining like a glass tower. Chiamaka felt small as she entered, her slippers tapping nervously on the marble floor. People in suits walked past her, carrying files and laptops. She wanted to turn back, but the receptionist smiled politely and guided her upstairs. Inside, Mr. Okafor sat behind a large desk. He greeted her kindly and asked her to sit. After a short silence, he said, "Chiamaka, I want to know something. If I give you an opportunity, will you be ready to work hard for it?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sir. I will. I only need a chance." He leaned back in his chair. "Good. I will test you. For 1 week, you will assist in one of my company's offices. If you do well, we will talk again." Chiamaka nodded quickly, her heart thumping. This was it, the moment that might change her life. But she also knew, if she failed, the small hope she had found might disappear forever. On Monday morning, Chiamaka stood nervously in front of a tall glass building in Victoria Island. She had left Ajagunle before sunrise, carrying nothing but her small handbag. Her heart pounded as she looked up at the offices that seemed to touch the sky. Never in her life had she entered a place like this. She took a deep breath and walked in. The security guards at the entrance looked at her strangely, but when she mentioned Mr. Okafor's name, they quickly let her through. The receptionist directed her to the third floor, where she was to begin her 1 week trial. The office was bright, with air conditioning, computers, and people dressed neatly in suits and skirts. Chiamaka felt out of place in her simple dress and worn shoes. She wished the floor would open and swallow her. A woman named Mrs. Johnson, who was the office supervisor, welcomed her. She was tall, with glasses resting on her nose, and she looked strict. "So, you're the girl Mr. Okafor sent?" Mrs. Johnson asked, scanning her from head to toe. "Yes, Ma," Chiamaka replied softly. We will see how you do." Follow me. Chiamaka was given simple tasks, arranging files, typing short documents, and serving tea to visitors. At first, her hands shook as she typed on the computer, since she had never used one before. She pressed the wrong keys and even made the machine freeze once. Some workers laughed quietly at her, whispering among themselves. Her cheeks burned, but she refused to give up. During lunch break, she sat alone in a corner, eating the small piece of bread she had brought from home. She listened as other staff members talked about vacations abroad, shopping in expensive malls, and plans for the weekend. Their world felt like another planet, but she also noticed something else. Hard work was respected here. Those who worked well received praise, and those who were lazy were corrected. That gave her hope. If she could learn quickly and do her best, maybe she would survive this test. Each day she pushed herself harder. She asked questions, observed carefully, and stayed late to finish whatever task was given. When she made mistakes, she apologized and tried again. Slowly, she improved. By the fourth day, she could type simple letters without mistakes. By the fifth day, she knew how to arrange files neatly in the cabinet. On the sixth day, something unexpected happened. A client came to the office, angry because some documents were missing. Everyone panicked, and Mrs. Johnson shouted at the junior staff, But Chiamaka quietly searched the drawers and found the missing file under a pile of papers. She quickly handed it over. The client calmed down, and Mrs. Johnson turned to Chiamaka with surprise in her eyes. "Good job," she said. For the first time, Chiamaka felt a small spark of confidence. When the week ended, she was called back to Mr. Okafor's main office. She sat nervously, twisting her fingers, waiting for his verdict. He looked at her with a calm smile. "Chiamaka, I have heard about your work. You made mistakes, but you also showed courage, humility, and a strong will to learn. That is what matters." Her breath caught. Was this the beginning of a new life? Chiamaka's heart beat fast as she listened to Mr. Okafor. After praising her effort, he leaned forward and said, "From today, you will work permanently in my company. Your salary will be enough to take care of yourself. But remember, success comes with responsibility." Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to kneel and thank him, but he stopped her with a gentle smile. "Just work hard. That is the best way to thank me." When she left his office that day, she felt like the whole of Lagos had changed. The air smelled different, the sun looked brighter, and her steps were lighter. For the first time in her life, she could dream without fear. She moved from Ajagunle to a small but better apartment in Surulere. It was nothing luxurious, but it was clean, with a strong roof and tiled floor. For the first time, she had a bed that did not shake and a kitchen where she could cook real food. She bought a second-hand phone and called Ifeoma immediately. Her friends screamed with joy when she heard the news. But as her life started to change, so did the challenges around her. Some people from her old compound spread rumors, saying she must have done something bad to attract the attention of a billionaire. Even her landlord, who once mocked her, suddenly became polite, as if he regretted pushing her away. At the office, things were not always smooth either. Some colleagues welcomed her warmly, but others looked at her with suspicion. One afternoon, she overheard two women whispering near the printer. "Can you imagine? From Ayagunle straight into this office. Do you think it's just hard work? Abeg, there must be something between her and Oga." They laughed, their voices dripping with jealousy. Chiamaka walked past them, her face burning. She wanted to cry, but she remembered Mr. Okafor's words. Success comes with responsibility. She knew she could not let gossip break her. Instead, she worked harder. She arrived early, left late, and volunteered for tasks others avoided. She learned quickly how to type official letters, organize meetings, and prepare simple reports. Slowly, Mrs. Johnson, who had once doubted her, began to trust her. But the pressure grew. One day, she was asked to help prepare documents for an important board meeting. The file was thick, and the deadline was short. She spent the whole night reading, arranging, and typing. By morning, her eyes were red and her hands ached, but she carried the neat report into the conference room with pride. Mr. Okafor noticed. After the meeting, he called her aside. "You are doing well, Chiamaka. But remember, people will always talk. Don't let their words control you. Focus on your path." That evening, as she sat in her small new apartment, she thought deeply. She had come far from the girl who once cried over hunger. Yet she could feel that her journey was not finished. She was standing at the edge of something greater, but also more dangerous. She whispered a prayer before sleeping. "God, give me strength. Don't let me fail now." Months passed, and Chiamaka grew stronger in her new life. She was no longer the timid girl who once hid from the world. She had learned how to carry herself with confidence, how to speak clearly in meetings, and how to solve problems under pressure. The company became like a school to her, teaching her lessons she had never imagined. One Friday afternoon, she was called again to Mr. Okafor's office. Her heart beat fast as she entered. He was seated by the window, looking out at the busy streets of Victoria Island. "Chiamaka," he began, smiling, "do you remember the first day I saw you?" "Yes, sir," she replied softly, her hands folded on her lap. "You were walking home, and I could see sadness on your face. I stopped because you reminded me of my younger sister. She was once like you, poor, hopeless, but determined. She didn't live long enough to see her dreams, but when I saw you, I felt I should not ignore you." Chiamaka's eyes filled with tears. She understood now. It was not luck alone. It was grace. tied to someone's memory and kindness. Mr. Okafor leaned forward. You have worked hard, and I am proud of you. I want to support you further. If you still want to continue your education, I will sponsor you. University law school, whatever you choose. Chiamaka gasped. Her childhood dream of becoming a lawyer came rushing back. For a moment she could not speak. Then she whispered, Thank you, sir. I will not waste this chance. He nodded. Remember, Chiamaka, wealth is not only about money. It is about using what you have to lift others. One day I hope you will do the same for someone else. That night she walked home with joy swelling in her chest. She entered her small apartment and sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Her life had changed in ways she never imagined. From a leaking room in Ajagunla, she now had a stable job, a future in education, and a man who believed in her. But she also knew it was not magic. It was faith, courage, and the strength to keep going even when life pushed her down. In the weeks that followed, she enrolled in evening classes to prepare for university admission. Each night after work, she studied with determination. Ifeoma cheered her on, saying, My friend, you will make us proud. One Sunday morning, as she walked to church wearing a simple but neat dress she had bought with her salary, she passed the same street where the SUV had once stopped. She paused, looking around. The boys who had mocked her months ago were still there, drinking and laughing. But this time she did not feel shame. She only smiled and walked on, her head held high. Life had taken her through fire, but she had not been consumed. Chiamaka knew her journey was only beginning. She was still poor in some ways, poor in experience, poor in knowledge, but rich in hope, courage, and faith. And that wealth was stronger than money. For in a city where millions struggled, a billionaire's car had stopped one evening, and that single act of kindness had turned her story into a new beginning.